Mike Tyson was 14 years old, sitting in Costa D'Amato's living room in Catskill, New York, watching his hero get destroyed on live television. Every punch Larry Holmes landed on Muhammad Ali felt like it was landing on Tyson's own face. By the 10th round, Tyson was crying so hard he could barely breathe. What happened in the phone call 3 hours later, and what Tyson promised Ali in that moment, would drive him for the next 8 years and lead to one of boxing's most brutal acts of revenge. It was October 2nd, Muhammad Ali, 38 years old, and way past his prime, was getting beaten so badly by Larry Holmes that even the announcers were begging for someone to stop the fight. This wasn't boxing, this was an execution, and Mike Tyson, just a troubled kid from Brooklyn, who'd found his way to Costa D'Amato's gym only months earlier, was watching his god bleed. Cos had let Tyson stay up to watch the fight. It was supposed to be a learning experience. Watch Ali's footwork, Cos had said. Study how he moves, but there was no footwork to study. There was only an old man, slow and sick, getting punched in the face over and over by someone who used to be his sparring partner. Tyson was just 14, but he already knew what it meant to worship Muhammad Ali. Every kid in Brooklyn knew Ali. Every kid in America knew Ali. But for Tyson, it was different. Deeper. Ali was the first person who made Tyson believe that being from the streets didn't mean you had to stay in the streets. Ali was proof that you could be powerful and beautiful at the same time, that you could fight like a demon and talk like a poet. Tyson had been living with Cos for 3 months. 3 months since Bobby Stewart, a counselor at the Tryon School for Boys where Tyson had been locked up for robbery, had brought this kid with a 50-inch chest and no future to meet the legendary trainer. 3 months since Cos had looked at this broken, angry boy and seen something no one else had seen, a future heavyweight champion. But that night, watching Ali, Tyson didn't feel like a future anything. He felt like he was watching his dreams die in real time. "Turn it off, Cos," Tyson said, his voice breaking. "Please, man, I can't watch this no more." Costa D'Amato, 71 years old, sat in his chair smoking a cigarette. He didn't turn it off. "You need to see this, Mike." "Why?" Tyson was crying openly now, not even trying to hide it. "Why are you making me watch this?" "Because," Cos said quietly, "this is what happens when you stay too long. This is what happens when you don't know when to quit." Ali should have stopped 3 years ago, but he didn't, and now we're watching him get hurt, because he couldn't let go. Tyson wiped his eyes with his sleeve. On the screen, Holmes landed another combination. Ali's head snapped back, again and again. "He's the greatest ever," Tyson said. "How's this happening to him?" "Time," Cos said. "Time beats everybody, Mike, even the great." By the 10th round, Angelo Dundee, Ali's trainer, had seen enough. He stopped the fight. It was called a TKO, but everyone watching knew what it really was, a mercy killing. After the broadcast ended, Tyson sat there in the dark living room, staring at the blank TV screen. He felt hollowed out, sick, like something sacred had been destroyed right in front of him, and he'd been forced to watch. "I'm going to bed," Tyson said quietly. "No, you're not," Cos said. "Come here." Tyson walked over to where Cos was sitting. The old man looked up at him with those intense eyes that could see right through bullshit, right through fear, right through everything. "You know what you just learned tonight?" Cos asked. "That heroes get old?" "No," Cos said. "You learned that nothing lasts forever. You learned that every champion has an expiration date, but you also learned something else. You learned what it feels like to love something so much that watching it die breaks your heart. And that feeling, Mike, that feeling right there, that's what's going to make you great. Because now you know what it costs to step into that ring. You know what it means to give everything. And one day, when you're champion, you're going to remember this night. You're going to remember how it felt to watch Ali suffer. And you'll know when it's time to walk away." But Tyson wasn't thinking about walking away. He was thinking about revenge. "I want to fight Holmes," Tyson said suddenly. "I want to hurt him for what he did." Cos almost smiled. "Larry Holmes is the heavyweight champion of the world. You're 14 years old. I don't care. I'm going to beat him someday. I'm going to beat him for Ali." "Maybe you will," Cos said. "But first you've got to learn how to fight, and that takes time." 3 hours later the phone rang. Cos answered it, listened for a moment, then looked at Tyson with an expression that made the kid's stomach drop. "It's for you," Cos said, holding out the phone. "Who is it?" "Muhammad Ali." For a moment, Tyson thought Cos was joking, but the old man wasn't smiling. Tyson's hands were shaking as he took the phone. "Hello, Mike Tyson?" The voice was slurred. slow. Parkinson's had already started affecting Ali's speech, though nobody knew it yet. Everyone just thought it was the beating he'd taken. Yeah, Tyson whispered. This is my... Cus tells me you're going to be heavyweight champion one day. Tyson couldn't speak. Muhammad Ali was on the phone. Muhammad Ali knew his name. You there, kid? Yeah, I'm here. I watched your fight tonight. There was a long pause. When Ali spoke again, his voice was different, quieter, more real. It was bad, wasn't it? Yes, sir. You crying for me earlier? Ali asked. Cus said you were crying. Tyson felt his face get hot. I wasn't crying for you. I was crying because Holmes didn't have no right to do that to you. You're the greatest. He's nothing. He's the champion, Ali interrupted. And tonight, he was the better fighter. That's boxing, Mike. Sometimes you're the hammer, sometimes you're the nail, but you're Muhammad Ali. I know who I am, Ali said, and there was something in his voice that made Tyson's chest tight. But tonight, I was an old man trying to be young again. And the thing about getting old, Mike, is you don't realize it's happening until it's too late. Your mind still thinks you're 25, but your body knows different. Tyson didn't know what to say. He'd never heard Ali sound like this. Defeated. Human. Cus says you got potential, Ali continued. Says you could be special. I'm going to be champion, Tyson said. I promise you that. I believe you. But I need you to promise me something else. Anything. I need you to promise me you'll beat Larry Holmes. Not for revenge, not for me, but because it's what you're supposed to do. Holmes is a good fighter, but he ain't built like you're going to be built. He ain't got what you're going to have. Cus is going to turn you into something nobody's ever seen before. And when that day comes, when you're ready, I need you to show Holmes what happens when you disrespect a legend. Tyson's heart was pounding. I promise. I swear to God I'll beat him. Good, Ali said. Then his voice softened again. But Mike, I need you to promise me something else too. I need you to promise that when your time comes, when you feel yourself slowing down, when the punches start landing that never used to land, you'll walk away. Don't end up like me. Don't let people watch you die in the ring. Promise me that. I promise. Both promises. Both promises. Good. Now give the phone back to Cus. Tyson handed the phone to his trainer, then walked out of the room, because he was about to start crying again and he didn't want Cus to see. He went upstairs to the small bedroom that Cus had given him, the first real bedroom he'd ever had, and he lay on the bed staring at the ceiling. Muhammad Ali had called him, had asked him to do something, had trusted him. Tyson made a decision that night. He was going to become the most dangerous fighter who ever lived, and he was going to destroy Larry Holmes. For the next 8 years, that promise burned inside Tyson like a coal he couldn't put out. Cus trained him harder than he'd ever trained anyone. Up at road work through the hills of Catskill, hours in the gym, hundreds of rounds of sparring. Cus was turning Tyson into something the boxing world had never seen. A heavyweight, with the hand speed of a middleweight, the power of a truck, and the aggression of a wild animal. You're not just learning to fight, Cus would tell him. You're learning to destroy. Every opponent who steps in the ring with you needs to know they're in danger, not just of losing, of getting hurt. Tyson absorbed everything. He became Cus's final project, his last master. The old man had trained Floyd Patterson and Jose Torres to championships, but Tyson was going to be something different, something scary. By 1986, Tyson was 20 years old, and destroying every opponent put in front of him. 22 wins, all by knockout. Most of them didn't make it past the third round. Tyson was becoming exactly what Cus had envisioned, a destroyer, but Cus never saw it happen. He died on November 4, 1985, just months before Tyson became the youngest heavyweight champion in history. Tyson won the title on November 22, 1986, by destroying Trevor Berbick in the second round. After the fight, in the chaos of the ring, Tyson didn't celebrate. He stood there looking lost, tears streaming down his face, because the one person he wanted to share this moment with was gone. Cus, Tyson whispered to no one. I did it, Cus. But there was still unfinished business. There was still a promise to keep. Larry Holmes. By 1988, Holmes was 38 years old, the same age Ali had been when Holmes beat him. Holmes had lost his title to Michael Spinks 2 years earlier, but was still considered dangerous, still considered one of the best technical fighters in the game. When the fight was announced, Mike Tyson versus Larry Holmes, people got excited for different reasons. Some wanted to see if Holmes could use his experience to outbox the young champion. Others wanted to see Tyson add another name to his list of victims. But Tyson knew what the fight was really about. This was 8 years in the making. This was the promise he'd made to Ali when he was 14 years old, crying in Cuss's living room. The press conference before the fight was tense. Holmes sat there with his usual confidence, talking about how he was going to teach Tyson a lesson about respect, about boxing IQ, about experience. Tyson barely said anything, just sat there staring at Holmes with those dead eyes. A reporter asked Tyson what he thought about Holmes's experience advantage. "Experience don't mean nothing when I hit you," Tyson said quietly. "Ask Michael Spinks what experience did for him." Tyson had destroyed Spinks 3 months earlier in 91 seconds. Another reporter brought up the Ali fight. "Larry, do you think about that fight with Ali? It's been 8 years. Holmes shrugged. Ali was old. He had no business being in the ring. "That's not on me." Tyson's jaw clenched. His hands resting on the table became fists. "You think that makes it better?" Tyson said, his voice low and dangerous. "You think beating up an old man is something to be proud of?" "I didn't beat up nobody," Holmes shot back. "I won a fight. Ali was a professional. He knew what he was getting into. You disrespected a legend. I did my job." Tyson leaned forward slightly. The energy in the room changed. Everyone could feel it. "In a week," Tyson said, "I'm going to do my job. And my job is to hurt you." The fight was set for January 22, 1988, in Atlantic City Convention Hall. Tyson was 21 years old, undefeated, and in his absolute prime. Holmes was 38, still skilled, but fighting against time itself. In the days leading up to the fight, Tyson was different. His trainers noticed it. Usually before fights, Tyson was all raw aggression, pacing like a caged animal. But this time, there was something colder about him, more focused. "You okay, champ?" Kevin Rooney, his trainer, asked him the day before the fight. "I'm good. You seem quiet." "I'm thinking about something I promised somebody a long time ago." The night of the fight, in his dressing room, Tyson sat alone for a few minutes before the walkout. He closed his eyes and he was 14 again, watching Ali get hurt, feeling helpless, angry, broke. Then he heard Cuss's voice in his head, clear as day. "Fear is the greatest obstacle to learning, but fear also makes you sharp. Use it." And Ali's voice, "I need you to show Holmes what happens when you disrespect a legend." Tyson opened his eyes. "Let's go." The walk to the ring was short. The crowd was going insane. This was Tyson at the peak of his powers, and everyone knew they were watching something special, not just a fighter, a force of nature. Holmes entered the ring, looking confident, still talking, still trying to convince everyone, including himself, that he belonged in there. When Tyson climbed through the ropes, he didn't look at Holmes, didn't acknowledge him, just went to his corner, and stared at the canvas, breathing slowly, getting into that dark place where he did his best work. The referee called them to the center of the ring for instructions. Holmes looked at Tyson and saw those eyes, empty, flat, dead, and for the first time, Holmes felt a flicker of something he hadn't expected. "Fear. Protect yourself at all times," the referee said. "Touch glove." Tyson didn't touch gloves, just turned and walked back to his corner. The bell rang. Tyson came out of his corner like he'd been shot from a cannon. No feeling out process, no caution, just pure, immediate violence. Holmes tried to use his jab to keep Tyson at distance, but Tyson was too fast, too aggressive, moving his head, slipping punches, getting inside. First minute, Tyson landed a right hand to Holmes's body that made the older fighter wince, then a left hook to the head that snapped Holmes's neck back. Holmes was already in trouble. Second minute, Tyson was relentless, head, body, head, combinations that came from angles Holmes had never dealt with. This wasn't boxing, this was assault. Holmes tried to tie Tyson up, tried to use his experience to slow things down, but Tyson was too strong. He pushed Holmes off and landed another right hand, this one clean on the jaw. Holmes's legs buckled. The crowd was on its feet. Third minute, Holmes was just trying to survive now, but Tyson wasn't going to let that happen. He'd promised Ali, he'd promised Cuss, and he was a man of his word. Tyson landed a left hook to the body that dropped Holmes to one knee. The referee started counting. Holmes got up at 8, but his eyes were glassy. The referee looked at him, asked if he could continue. Holmes nodded. Big mistake. Tyson came at him again. 3 punches, a right to the body, a left hook to the head, and a right uppercut that landed so clean, so perfect, that Holmes's head snapped back, and his body went stiff. He fell straight back, hitting the canvas hard. The referee didn't even count. He waved it off immediately.
The fight was over. 4 rounds, 4 minutes, and 38 seconds. Mike Tyson had just destroyed Larry Holmes. In his corner, Tyson didn't celebrate. He just stood there breathing hard, staring down at Holmes, who was still on the canvas, being attended to by the ringside doctor. Then Tyson did something nobody expected. He walked over to Holmes and extended his hand. Holmes, dazed, confused, took it. Tyson helped him up. "You're a great fighter," Tyson said quietly, so only Holmes could hear. "But that was for Ali, you understand?" Holmes nodded slowly. He understood. In the post-fight interview, Jim Gray asked Tyson about the performance. "Mike, you just destroyed a former heavyweight champion in under 5 rounds. What's going through your mind right now?" Tyson looked directly into the camera. 8 years ago, I watched Larry Holmes beat up Muhammad Ali. I was just a kid, and it broke my heart. Tonight, I kept a promise I made to Ali. That night, this fight was never about me and Holmes. It was about respect. It was about showing the world that you don't disrespect legends. You don't beat up old men and call it business." He paused. "Ali, if you're watching this, I did what I said I would do. I hope I made you proud." Muhammad Ali was watching. He was at his home in Michigan, surrounded by family. When Tyson knocked out Holmes, Ali stood up, slowly, his Parkinson's making every movement difficult and "He did it," Ali said, his speech slurred but his smile genuine. "That boy kept his promise." Ali's wife, Lonnie, had tears in her eyes. "He did it for you." "I know," Ali said. "I knew he would." The next day, Ali called Tyson. "You kept your word," Ali said. "I told you I would. You did more than beat Holmes. You reminded people what it means to honor the past, what it means to respect the people who came before you. Cos taught me that. You taught me that. Cos was a great man. I'm sorry you lost him." "Me too." Then Ali said something that Tyson would carry with him for the rest of his life. "Mike, you're the champion now, the real champion, not just because you got the belt, but because you understand what the belt means. It means you carry the legacy of everyone who ever wore it. Dempsey, Lewis, Marciano, me, we're all in there with you. And now, every time you step in that ring, you're fighting for all of us. Don't forget that." "I won't." "And Mike, yeah, remember the other promise you made me. When it's time to walk away, walk away. Don't end up like I did. Don't let them watch you die." Tyson was quiet for a long time. "I remember," he finally said, "but that promise would be harder to keep." The Holmes fight became a defining moment in Tyson's career. It wasn't just another knockout. It was a statement. It was Tyson claiming his place in boxing history as the heir to Ali's throne, the young lion destroying the old guard. The promise kept. In the years that followed, people would talk about that fight not just as a great performance, but as an act of loyalty, of love, of respect for the past. Holmes himself, years later in an interview, was asked about the Tyson fight. "Did you know going in that he had a personal motivation?" the interviewer asked. "Not until after," Holmes said. "When he told me it was for Ali, I understood. I didn't agree with it. I did what I had to do in 1980, but I respected it. Tyson wasn't just fighting me, he was fighting for something bigger." The reporter pressed. "Do you regret the Ali fight?" Holmes paused. "I regret that Ali was too old to defend himself. I wish that fight never happened, but I don't regret doing my job. That's the thing about boxing. Sometimes you're the hero, sometimes you're the villain. That night, I was the villain, and 8 years later, Tyson made sure I paid for it." Cus D'Amato never got to see Tyson destroy Holmes. He died 3 years before that fight, but people who knew Cus said he would have been proud, not just of the victory, but of the reason behind it. "Cus always taught Mike that boxing was about more than winning," said Steve Lott, one of Tyson's early managers. "It was about honor, about respecting the men who built the sport." That Holmes fight, that was Cus talking through Mike's fists. For Tyson, the Holmes fight was the purest moment of his career. It was before the chaos, before the implosion, before everything fell apart. It was when he was still Cus's student, still Ali's avenger, still the young champion who believed in something bigger than himself. "That fight was the last time I felt like I was fighting for the right reasons," Tyson said in a 20th. "After that, it all became about money, about ego, about my own demons. But that night in Atlantic City, I was fighting for my hero. I was keeping a promise to the greatest man who ever stepped in a ring. And for 4 rounds, I was exactly who Cus wanted me to be, a warrior, with a purpose." Today, When boxing historians talk about Mike Tyson's greatest performances, they often mention the Holmes fight, not because it was his most technically brilliant victory, though it was devastating, but because it represented everything Tyson was supposed to be: the protector of the sport's legacy, the young champion honoring the old guard, the promise keeper, and somewhere, in that great gym in the sky, Cus D'Amato and Muhammad Ali are watching, proud of the boy from Brooklyn, who remembered where he came from, who kept his word, who showed the world that some promises are worth keeping, even if it takes 8 years, because champions aren't just made in the ring, they're made in the moments when they choose honor over everything else, when they fight not for themselves, but for something big. Mike Tyson destroyed Larry Holmes in 4 rounds, but the real victory happened 8 years earlier, in a dark living room in Catskill, New York, when a 14-year-old kid made a promise to a broken hero, and kept. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to understand what loyalty looks like, because the greatest victories aren't always about winning. Sometimes they're about remembering, about keeping promises to people who believed in you when you were nothing. Muhammad Ali saw something in Mike Tyson that night, and Tyson spent 8 years proving Ali was right. That's what greatness looks like.